Now we have a really basic mono synth that you can mess with. It's nothing special, but it's still pretty cool. Hi, I'm Ryan from Amber Elm. This is going to be a super basic beginner's guide to modular synthesis, like basic, like what's an oscillator basic. Last week I made a video about the benefits of using VCV Rack. One of the reasons I gave was it's a great tool to learn modular synthesis. I go through and talk about some of the resources here on YouTube that I use getting started with it. One viewer commented that he was interested in all of this, but had no idea where to start. And a lot of the beginner videos on YouTube sort of assumed a certain level of knowledge. He wished that there was a video assuming that the viewer had zero knowledge of any of it. So that's what I figured I'd do. I'm making the guide that I wish that I had when I was starting out. By the time I really started using VCV Rack, I had a basic understanding of the concepts of synthesis. I'd never used modular hardware, but already had some experience using things like the Moog Grandmother, the DeepMind 12, and some software synths. So here is my attempt at a Synthesis 101 guide. I'm going to go over the basics of creating a simple mono synth voice. I'll cover VCOs, VCAs, envelope generators, filters, control voltage, and LFOs. I think LFOs. If you have VCV Rack already, that's great. You can open it up and follow along. If you don't, you can download it for free. The link's in the description. All the modules that I'll be using today are all free on VCV Rack. In fact, not all the modules on VCV Rack are free, but I'd say the vast majority are, and the premium ones that you can pay for aren't really all that much, and they're well worth it. So if you don't have it already, I would really recommend you download VCV Rack. Doing this while we talk about it, or watching the video and then going and trying it yourself will really kind of hammer this stuff home. First, I'm going to go over some of the terminology, then we can start building a voice, and I'll pepper in some more terms and concepts as they come up. I've timestamped the video, so feel free to the different sections. Control voltage. Control voltage, or CV, isn't a module I can pull up and show you. Rather, it's a pretty basic building block. It's an electrical signal used in synthesizers to control various sound parameters like pitch, volume, and filter settings. By adjusting the voltage, you can change how different parts of the sound behave. You can make your sound more dynamic, more expressive. It's a really flexible way to shape your sound in real time. VCO. A VCO is a voltage-controlled oscillator. You might hear them just called oscillators, or tone generators, or analog oscillators. Whatever they're called, they work the same. They use voltage to change its pitch up or down. Imagine it like your own voice. Your voice would be the VCO itself. It makes sound. Your breath would be the voltage. The harder you push your breath, the more breath equals more voltage, the higher the pitch would be. The softer you push your breath, less breath equals less voltage, the lower the pitch would be. You can pause and try that if you want. It's not a perfect analogy, but it'll do for now. You'll see different icons or labels on oscillators like sine, tri, saw, or square. These refer to different waveforms that the oscillator is producing. They all function the same way but have a different sonic quality. So here's what they all sound like just on their own. VCA. A VCA is a voltage-controlled amplifier. It can do a lot, and the further you get into modular, you'll want a lot more of them, and you'll use them in pretty creative ways. But for now, the way you can start to understand them is they just control the volume of the sound. The voltage control comes in because you can control that volume with voltage. An oscillator is pretty useless on its own and pretty annoying. We're going to use voltage to control different aspects of it. The first aspect is the note itself. We do that by plugging something into the volt per octave input on the VCO. This could be a few different things. A keyboard, a sequencer, which will be a different video, anything that sends voltage. I'm gonna use my keyboard, but you could also use a QWERTY keyboard if you don't have a MIDI keyboard hooked up. But before we do anything, I like to pull up a mixer and an audio module in VCV Rack. The mixer and the audio are just how we're gonna be hearing what we're doing. Let's hook up the mixer to the audio module. Every patch you will make will have this connection or some version of it. Turn the volume down a little. It's not gonna be a sound that is pleasant at first. To open up a module in VCV Rack, just right-click anywhere inside of the program, and all the modules that you own are going to populate in here. You can filter them out by brand, by tag, and so let's just go to the VCV library. Okay, so here is all the basic VCV things that comes with VCV Rack, just kind of standard. Your LFOs, your VCOs, VCAs, we're going to get into all that. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to write in audio, and here is my audio module. I'm going to right click again and type in mixer, and I'm going to pull up mixer that I like to use. This mixer module you'd have to add. It's the Mixmaster Junior from MindMeld. You could also use any other mixer, the mixer that comes with VCV Rack. I was going to use, I didn't want to confuse you because it's also a CV, it's like a VCA mixer. I just wanted to use a mixer to start so we could go over what VCAs are on their own. And for the audio module, you're going to select the device that you're going to use. So I'm using my Universal Thunderbolt, so I will choose out 1 and 2 of that. And then I can take the main out of my mixer and plug it into the left and right channels of the audio. And this little connection is just going to be how we hear everything. So let's get back to our VCO. We need to pull in a MIDI to CV module and a VCO and a VCA. I'm looking for a MIDI to CV module, and all this is going to do is take whatever MIDI data I'm sending in through a keyboard or from a QWERTY keyboard, or just like the keyboard you type with, and turns that into control voltage. So here's my MIDI to CV module, and also that could work the other way around. So you could have a CV to MIDI module if you wanted to send this the other way, but we're going MIDI to CV. And I'm also going to need to pull in a VCO and a VCA. So right click, type in VCA, and here it is. Let's connect the volt per octaves output from the MIDI to CV module to the volts per octave input of the VCO. When we say volts per octave here, it just refers to the voltage and the octave of the note. If I raise the volt by 1, it'll raise the octave by 1. And the relationship between, 0.2 volts or 0.4 volts are going to be different notes. And you'll see what I mean. So let's take this volt per octave and go into the volt per octave in of our VCO. And we're going to take the out of the VCO into the VCA. And you can see here it's lit up, meaning we have signal going through. I'm going to take the out of my VCA into my mixer. And we have level. And remember, we said that the VCA can control the volume. I can manually do that by just pulling this down. Right now we'll leave it up. And I'll play some notes on my keyboard, and you can't hear anything. Nothing's changing. And that's because, well, let's unhook this for a second. I never assigned this MIDI to CV module to any MIDI device. So to do that, I just click where it says no device, and I select whatever I'm going to be using. In my case, I'm using channel A on my MIDI Spark. So now let's reconnect this connection. And if I play another note, it changes. You'll notice that it's not stopping. The note just plays on and on. Same volume. You can change the pitch, but that's all. To make the note start and stop when you want to, we need to work with the gate. A good way to think of gate is to think of an actual gate. It lets the sound through. It can open and then it can close. It can open slowly and close slowly, or open and close really quickly, however we set it up. We need to add another module now called an envelope generator. This envelope generator will use 4 stages to shape our sound: attack, decay, sustain, and release. Attack is how we first hear the note. It's how long it takes to get it to its max volume. A fast attack means we'll hear the note immediately. With a slow attack, the sound from the oscillator will fade in slowly. The decay stage will be where the sound goes after the attack stage. After the sound reaches its peak, it's how quickly it drops to a lower and steady volume. The sustain is how the volume level will stay as you hold the key down. When you stop pressing the key, you enter release. The release is how the sound behaves when you let go of the note. If you have a long release, the note will drop back to 0 very slowly. If you turn the release all the way down, when you let go of the key, the sound will stop. For reference, an instrument like a piano would have a very fast release. You let go of the note and the sound sort of stops. But if you take something like a guitar and I pluck a string, it has a longer release. I've let go of the note or just plucked it, and it takes the sound a while to go from its volume back down to 0. So since we're trying to get our oscillator to be more useful instead of just constantly running, we'll add our envelope, the way we want our sound shaped, and we'll send that to our VCA's control voltage input. Now when we trigger the envelope generator, it will send that information via voltage to the VCA, which controls the volume in this patch. So let's set this patch up again from scratch really quickly. It's the VCO out to the VCA in, envelope out to our CV in of the VCA, and to control those, we'll send our MIDI CV volt per octave out to the volt per octave in of the VCO, and the gate out to the gate in of our envelope. Now we have a really basic monosynth that you can mess with. It's nothing special, but it's still pretty cool. We'll add one more really important thing to this patch: a filter. A VCF, or a filter, takes the frequency of your sound and filters it. It cuts out certain frequencies. Different filters are low pass filters, high pass filters, and band pass filters. Right now, we're gonna stick with a low pass filter, which means we're gonna filter out all the higher frequencies and let the low pass through, so low pass filter. So before we send our VCA to our mixer, let's have it make a pit stop into our filter. So all I'm gonna do is unplug it from the mixer and move that cable to the filter's input, so the VCF in. And then I'm gonna go the out of the low pass filter, so take it where it says LPF and just go back where it was in the mixer. And now it's going through our filter. Now you can use that filter knob to shape the sound even further. As you learn more about different modules and their functions, you can make this basic voice much more interesting. The last thing I want to kind of throw out into this is an LFO, or low frequency oscillator. It's just like an oscillator, but the waves are moving so slowly that they don't make sound. They aren't audio rate. Think of an LFO like invisible hands turning knobs for you in a particular way. If we take our LFO and put it in our filter cutoff control voltage input, it will start to turn the filter frequency on its own. It's a really great tool, but this video is getting a little long already, so I think I'll save it for next time. Hopefully this helped, and I'd encourage you to try and make this patch a bunch of times. Just sort of make it, disconnect all the cables, make it again, and mess with different aspects of it to really understand kind of how it's all working and what it's doing. Especially working in VCV Rack, where you can kind of control Z and undo, just start taking patch cables and patching it to different things and seeing what that does to the sound. This really is all about experimentation and trying to make things that sound cool. So hopefully, you have a basic understanding of how it all works, and then you can sort of mess with it from there. So honestly, if you can get this and maybe a few other basic concepts, synthesis will sort of open up to you, and you can start to understand how to make certain sounds happen. I'll make another video going into LFOs and sequencers and some other stuff next time. But if you have any questions about what I did here today, leave them down in the comments. I'll try to answer as many as I can. Until then, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.